All right, everybody, we are going to get started in a quick moment with our panel. We'll ask for you to rejoin us, come and take a seat. All right, everybody, thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to pass over the mic to Dr. Kevin McKelvey, who will be leading our panel this morning about Swiftconomics. The panel discussion is titled Analyzing Swiftconomics. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Candace. And before we begin the panel discussion, I would like to express my gratitude to a gentleman in the audience who pointed out an egregious typographical error that we had before. It said that the application deadline was 21 July, but in fact, it's 21 June. So thank you for pointing that out. So just so you know, if you're keen to apply for our program for this fall, you need to get your application in by the 21st of June, just 2 weeks from now, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so now we are going to turn to the topic of Swiftconomics. And I have to confess in advance, I think I know exactly one Taylor Swift song, and now I can't even remember which one it is. But we're not really going to talk about Taylor Swift as such, rather than talk about the various disciplines that our three wonderful faculty members here represent and how we might look at the issue of Taylor Swift and the phenomenon of Swiftconomics through the lenses of these various disciplines. And so before we begin, I would just like to take some time now. You've all met me, but I would like each of our panelists in turn maybe to just introduce yourselves, say a few words, who you are, what you teach, what is your background, how long have you been teaching here with the SIM program, and lastly, what's your favorite thing about teaching here for SIM-UB? Let's start with Lee Mei Chu.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Lee Mei. I teach psychology here at SIM-UB. I mainly teach the introductory psychology units. I teach both introductory psychology and a program called UB Seminar. All right, been teaching here since 2017, so it's been 7 years now, right? What else? I have a PhD in psychology from Macquarie University. So most of my education was in Australia. And what I like most teaching here about UB is that I really like the students here. I love really interacting with a lot of students. I find most of them are very engaged, very participative. And I just love exploring their potential a lot, I really like finding bring out the best of them. And I really like to see them shine by the end of the courses, because I get to really be their first point of contact, because I'm really the first person they meet. I usually get the first semester students for the most part. So that's what I really enjoy about, teaching at UB.
Thank you, Lee Mei. And it's actually a really good point you say about meeting the students when they first come in. I talked before about participation, and we recognize that when students join our program, they're not accustomed to it, and it takes a while for them to get used to it. So we're very grateful to people like Lee Mei, who teach the introductory level courses, to help them start making the transition, because that prepares them for when they have classes with people like Dr. Debbie Street. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Debbie Street. I'm a professor of sociology, so I teach sociology modules here in Singapore. I am also the self-appointed Taylor Swift of sociology. That's not really true. I haven't sold billions of anything. And I will also confess that I'm going to talk less about Swiftconomics and more about how we can use Taylor Swift as a way to engage young people in thinking about more abstract concepts that will be useful to their everyday lives in the future, not just for Swiftie fandom right now. Because the whole point, after all, of what we do here is to help your sons and daughters, or you, if you're here on your own, is to help prepare you for a world that's changing so quickly that it's breathtaking. And so my job here is to learn alongside students to help them acquire the knowledge, the skills, the confidence to go out into a world that's going to be very different 10 years from now than it is today. So our job at UB, and I'm not speaking only for sociology here, I'm speaking for all of our disciplines. We are very aware of the fact that what we need to impart to students is the capacity to assess information, how good a quality is the information that you're making decisions on, and then thinking critically about how it can be useful to you for the rest of your lives. If we train students who are flexible and adaptable and know how to assess information and think critically about it, we have prepared students for an entire lifetime of learning where they have the tools they need to understand when new trends come along, how to adapt to those, which is why I think Kevin mentioned in the earlier session, we do not focus on memorization. I kid around with my students, and I'm only partly kidding. That's what Google is for. You don't need to memorize a fact. You can find a fact. But boy, oh boy, you need to know how to assess whether that information is high quality. And then what do you do with the information once you have it? So that's me, the Taylor Swift of sociology.
Thank you, Debbie. And it's a really great point about how education doesn't end when you get your degree and graduate. You have to constantly be learning new things because if you just take what the content is for any of our coursework, oh my goodness, think about how obsolete we are now. We have to always be learning new things. So what Debbie just talked about, providing the skill set to make you competent to continue learning even after graduation is a major component of our program. Okay, so Marianne.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marianne Rogers. I have been teaching in the School of Management since 2007. I have been teaching here at UBSIM since 2009. So this is my 14th summer. I feel very privileged to be a part of this faculty. It's an incredible opportunity for us to come over from Buffalo and to spend time with these wonderful young students that we get to see, in my case, for the next several weeks. I teach organizational behavior. So essentially that has to do with working with people and working through people. I tell my students from the first day, there aren't very many jobs where someone is what's known as a sole practitioner. There's really nowhere to go in the work world where we're not going to be working with groups and teams. So my course centers around a lot of those dynamics. There's a big group project where they get to know each other. What I like best about my course, and probably yours as well, they leave making new friends. And that's always just a great aspect of our program. I have a group of alumni who actually started a business together 10 years ago, and it's still a going concern. And I'm just so proud of them that they were able to come out of SIM and launch a venture like that. I just want to clear up one misconception about a business school. Oftentimes, it's thought that the main goal of coming out with a business degree is just to make money. Most certainly, that is an emphasis for those who really do want to go out and set the world on fire and make a lot of money. But under our current dean, and really for the last couple of administrations, there's been a huge emphasis on social impact, making a difference for good, leading for good, working in nonprofits, innovation, entrepreneurship, and just a whole host of opportunities beyond just working on Wall Street or in a financial sector somewhere. And so what I really do like best about working with my students is similar to what you've just heard previously. It's wonderful to see the light bulb go on. We teach them how to think as a business person. So pretty much daily in my class, they get really thorny dilemmas that they have to think through. Maybe there isn't a clear answer as to what the action would be. You just have the discomfort of uncertainty and thinking about how to apply the concepts of organizational behavior to work through those things to get to a good outcome.
Thank you. So speaking of money, Taylor Swift, she's a very successful and rich businesswoman, and she has many apparently popular songs. Do you, Marianne, I'm just going to ask everyone in turn, do you have a favorite Taylor Swift song?
I do not. I love Taylor Swift and the way she presents herself and what she accomplishes. I have a hard time listening to the music for a long time on end. I would say Shake It Off, I think, has a wonderful message about resiliency and just being tough enough to conquer whatever life throws at us on any given day. I have two nieces that are sisters. They are huge Swifties. They're leaving Buffalo in 2 weeks to go to Germany to see her. So I hear enough about Taylor Swift. I know what she means to this generation, and what she imparts to them is just really phenomenal in terms of her life lessons and how she manages herself.
Yeah, great point. As I mentioned, the song that you just mentioned, that's the one I know, and I sing it to myself every morning. But she is an amazing businesswoman. She is absolutely, it's truly incredible, the empire that she has built up for herself. So Debbie, do you have a favorite Taylor Swift song?
I think maybe I have a favorite Taylor Swift theme,
Okay.
and it would probably be Anti-Hero. Because I'm a sociologist, our discipline study, it's the scientific study of human societies. And we have a tendency as human beings to valorize people, like Taylor Swift. She is heroic in many young minds. You know, she's very much a role model. And I think she's a better role model than a lot of celebrities are. So I don't really have a problem with that. But what sociology forces people to pay attention to is not the heroes of a place, but all the rest of us. Maybe we're not anti-heroes, but the quiet heroism of living through every day, supporting your family, being patriotic in your country, caring about your fellow human beings. We ignore those heroes a lot of the time. We take them for granted. They make our lives livable. So sociology helps us understand what is it about human beings getting together collectively to do things, not just to compete and win and be the hero, but sort of in the theme of Marianne, to cooperate, get together and figure out how to do it together.
Thank you. Lee May.
I'm not so philosophical, unfortunately. So I'm not really a Swiftie. I don't want to be compared to them because for me, Taylor Swift, one of her albums came out during a time when I first started my PhD. So one of the songs is a little bit more nostalgic. So when I listen to Taylor Swift, it's more of a nostalgia sort of feeling. So I relate more to that nostalgic feeling, that wholesomeness. So one of the songs that's more nostalgic to me is Love Story. Like when I listen to Love Story, it reminds me of a very positive moment, and it reminds me of a very old time when I was doing my PhD. Well, the better times of my PhD, I should say, because there's some down moments during the PhD. But look, you know, what I like about Taylor Swift is her relatability of her lyrics. You know, I believe a lot of her fandom relates to her lyrics. There's a sense of wholesomeness to it, and I believe that, you know, music heals. You know, from the psychology of it, like, you know, it helps people heal when you can relate to the music, and that aspects of it is like, you know, very, very lovely about it.
Yeah, it seems to me that many people derive strength from her music. So very, very good. Okay, so now I think we can turn to the topic of Swiftonomics and looking at it, as I mentioned, from the sort of the lens of each of these disciplines. What do we mean, first of all, by Swiftonomics? As we know, Taylor Swift recently came to perform a concert here in Singapore, or several concerts, and the economic impact was huge. They were talking millions and millions and millions of dollars that people spend staying at hotels, eating in restaurants when they come to Singapore, much to the dismay of people in surrounding countries, sadly. But the impact is just, it's stunning how one individual person through her career as a musician has had such a enormous economic impact and has such a gigantic financial empire. That in its own right is worth studying. But what we would like to look at now is how this whole phenomenon of Swiftonomics and how Taylor Swift and her followers are willing, to devote so much money and time and so on in following her. Let's look at it from these academic perspectives. So I'll ask each of you in turn just to say a few words about how you think, what are some key points that we can take away about Taylor Swift and Swiftonomics from psychology, from sociology, and from Marianne's field of, shall we say, organizational behavior? Yeah, okay. We'll start with Lee May.
Well, sorry, my voice is not quite recovered. So from psychology, there are a few areas that psychology, offers. So essentially, there are a few parts. One, we can look at it from the parasocial relationship point of view. We can definitely look at it from the social identity point of view, and we can definitely look at it from the overall impact of the mental health on her fandom overall. Okay, but I won't go delve too deep on it. When we look at it from psychology, right? Taylor Swift would definitely have an enormous impact on her fandom, such to the point that it's actually a psychology course at Arizona State University, actually, And so when we talk about parasocial relationship, we're talking about one-way, relationship that people can have with, online media persona or fictitious characters, And it's to the point that people can have either a very mild bonding kind of relationship, with people, or to a very obsessive kind of, maladaptive. We call it maladaptive because it gets to a very dysfunctional kind of status, And when it gets to that kind of dysfunctional status, it can, get to the point where we classify it as a celebrity worship syndrome, okay? And depending on how you look at it, people can go really very far. And then, you can see very varying range of kind of behaviors that people can go as far to basically, display and go how far they will go to basically, for their celebrity or their biases as we understand it, you know what I mean? But that's how we basically would like to study it from the psychological point of view. And then if I were to put a few words about social identity, in terms of psychology, how we, see, how people understand in terms of the social identity theory, people sometimes, build the identity from how they see, themselves as part of a larger community in terms of their fandom, It's to the point that the whole identity is tied to, belonging to the same group, and how the identity is tied to that, community, to the point that sometimes they develop terminologies for themselves. So how we basically understand that, they see themselves as Swifties. That's why I don't dare to call myself a Swiftie, because I don't really, know the lyrics. I don't know her life story. Although I tried to watch a documentary last night, to try to understand it better. I really tried. But, it's very wholesome. But what I really like about, the whole fandom is like how wholesome they are, they got to the point, when you see it at concerts, they exchange the friendship bracelet, how they really reinforce and build that inclusiveness, that identity and stuff, So psychology basically can, help build and understand the sense of belongingness that the fandom has created among themselves. And without a doubt, there is definitely no saying about the fact that Taylor Swift has a great impact and ability to influence the well-being of her fandom. Like I said before, her music has a tendency to heal. Like Bill Thompson from Bond University has said that, when she talks about, and she sings about her breakup song, people do relate to it, like it's quite healing, when you do hear people sing about breakup song, when you hear about it, you relate to it, you hear about it, it helps you process the grief of, a relationship that has ended, as you listen to it, it helps you process it, it helps you move on. Of course, don't listen to it too much, sometimes when you listen to it too much, it can make you a bit sadder, but at the same time, the music, it heals all of us, it bonds people together, that kind of thing. celebrities definitely have a great influence on, on people as well, and stuff. So without a doubt, this is where psychology can be interested in.
Okay, thank you. By the way, Debbie and Marianne, if you have anything, questions or anything to add on that account?
Not at this point.
Okay, we can come back to it later. Debbie, why don't you tell us about Swiftonomics from the point of view of sociology, and what do you find especially interesting and salient?
Okay, being the anti-hero and always going a little different path, I'm going to shout out some of the other disciplines in our UB program here, even though I think everybody in this room would benefit from having half of their double major be in sociology. The other disciplines that we have in our program would offer valuable insights into understanding the phenomenon of Taylor Swift. So as I'm looking around at the signs around the room, if I were an economics instructor, I wouldn't necessarily assume that every student in my classroom was just dying to understand supply and demand from an economic perspective, but I could get my students interested if I talked about Taylor Swift. Or if people were concerned about monopolies, how do you buy a ticket to see a Taylor Swift concert? What does that tell us about monopolies? So if I were an economist, I would use Taylor Swift as a way in to try to engage students in the abstractions of learning economic theory. If I was in geographic information systems, I might pay attention to the fact that during a Taylor Swift concert, you can actually measure seismically the rhythm of her music, which I just find astounding. I know absolutely nothing about geographic information science, except that where she is geographically, we can look on a seismograph and see when she's in concert. That's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. Communication. Wow, she has demonstrated that she can communicate effectively to a young generation of people. And she uses communication in a range of ways, which is one of the things that my colleagues in the communication department try to impart to their students. There's more than one way to communicate, and you often have to use different methods to reach different audiences. So she uses social media with a lot of savvy, but the lyricism of her music also communicates directly. Her fans feel like she's talking to them or sometimes talking for them. So when I think about different departments in the College of Arts and Sciences, I can see how all of my colleagues could maybe use Taylor Swift as a way into the more abstract parts of their discipline. I have a confession to make. This semester, I am teaching social policies for aging societies. Now, I think that's an important, even if it's not a very sexy topic, it's an important topic. It's not as interesting as Taylor Swift. But some of the things that a sociologist could use in classes, does Taylor Swift appeal to multiple generations of people in different age groups? Is there a message there for older people and not just teenagers and young adults? Sociologists, because they study how humans behave. What can we learn about crowd behavior from observing a Taylor Swift concert? Sometimes crowds behave like mobs, but that hasn't seemed to be the case at her concerts. Instead, her Swifties make friendship bracelets and give them out to strangers. So it's other regarding. What concepts in sociology could help somebody understand that process better? We have watched how Taylor Swift has expressed herself publicly about some of the challenges she has faced growing into young womanhood. Can we translate those lessons in a social scientific way to the longer period of emerging from adolescence to adulthood? I call it adult essence, that longer period. Now, we used to think when somebody was 16, they were grown up. We don't think that anymore. So what does this longer period of life mean? We've watched her unfold it in front of our eyes. What does it mean for young Singaporeans' own experiences? So even though that's not exactly Swiftonomics, it's me trying to think through conceptually how my colleagues in other disciplines and how colleagues in my discipline might use Taylor Swift as an example in class to understand a concept that's quite abstract until you attach some real life details to it.
Thank you, Debbie. I think deep down, we are all economists in one way or another, because we all have to make decisions about things and how we're going to spend our money. And deep down, we are all sociologists too, because we live in a social world. And even if we don't actually think about it very actively, we are still, as you were speaking, I couldn't help think of my previous experience going to see the Grateful Dead in concert. I was never a Deadhead, make no mistake, but it was just such a fascinating thing to see the sort of the interactions among the crowd and so on. So I think that that's same phenomenon now with the Swifties, apparently. Same kind of thing. So speaking of deadheads, Marianne Rogers, your field is organizational behavior. And I think that's a really, really, really interesting thing to think about the Swifties. And do they constitute a kind of an organization as such? You can talk about anything, but that's one of the questions that always comes to my mind when I think about these kind of big mega groups of fans and how they comport themselves.
Most definitely. There is a culture in that community. Just allow me to expand out a little bit. I am in the School of Management, and there are 5 other departments besides mine, which is organizational behavior. So for example, in the Department of Finance, they're thinking about valuation, they're thinking about money. Look at the way Taylor Swift handles her money. Very smart, very savvy, very shrewd with how she builds upon her wealth. There's a whole body of work there if anyone cares to read that. I was just reading an article about how her record collection was pretty much sold out from under her first set of masters. And there's a whole Harvard business case on how to value that and what the calculation for valuing that deal really was. If we move over to our marketing department, they're thinking about branding, how strong her brand is, how much people identify with it, her values, the way that she's just able to tap into those emotions of her fans and how relatable she is. And she comes across as so authentic. Yes, the use of social media, the way she makes her marketing decisions. From everything that I've read about her, she is making those decisions. She is determining to put her record out on red vinyl and blue vinyl and everything she can to maximize sales. It's just really quite brilliant. So we've already addressed economics. There is an economics department in my school as well, which would be thinking about these things. In my department, we think about leadership. We study what's known as charismatic leadership. What makes a person charismatic is something that we try to get our arms around. And, you know, inarguably, Taylor Swift is charismatic. She demonstrates charismatic behavior. She's bold. She takes risks. She's visionary. She breaks norms. She can do things that many other people can't. So she truly does come across as a charismatic leader. In my course, I ask the question, are leaders born or made? And I always ask the students, do you have to be born with certain traits to be a leader? Or can you learn how to be a leader? We are 100% certain that leaders can be made. That's why our program is here. By the way, I keep forgetting to mention, my school is 100 years old. The School of Management at UB is 100 years old. We have been through many, many decades of wars in the US and depression, and we've withstood a lot of adversity, and we are solid. So if any parents in the audience are worried about whether anything might be a little flim-flam, the University at Buffalo is solid. We've been there for a long time, and we're looking forward to the next 100 years. But anyway, I digress a little bit. So getting back to leadership, we train our students how to be leaders. We can show them the behaviors. We can show them the techniques to be leaders. There is a lot of literature on how people can become charismatic. They don't necessarily have to be born that way. If they understand the types of behaviors that a charismatic person uses, they can pretty much do the same thing. So it's really quite fascinating. And it's wonderful to see young students come through that just need to find their footing, need to find some confidence. And when they go through programs like ours, they come out truly transformed. They really do. So certainly leadership, power, and influence is a big part of my course. Taylor Swift has power bases beyond just her legitimate power of being an employer and a boss. She has what's known as reward power. She gave her transportation team, she gave the truck drivers that haul her equipment around $100,000 bonuses after the first leg of her tour. She's generous. She exhibits really good leader behavior. She has what's known as referent power. She's extremely likable by the way she presents herself. That's something that all of our students can have. They can have referent power too. And she also has expert power, which is something that we let our students know, if whether you're 17 years old or 21 years old, you can have expert power too. There is great power in being good at something. Taylor Swift is really good at what she does. She writes her own songs. She publishes. She makes her own decisions. When it looks like she will be hamstrung or faced with adversity, she always prevails. And these are just wonderful. It's just a wonderful example, I think, for young people to see. I read an article. If she's having a bad day, we are never going to know it. She will not let anyone see that she's having a bad day. And so, these are qualities that are probably useful to emulate as we go through our lives and we try to put our best foot forward.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So this has been kind of a overview of the different disciplines that are represented here. Thank you, Debbie, also for mentioning that not every discipline is mentioned here. So just looking around the audience, I can see that we have some of our other faculty members here, and you may want, if you're in the audience, to approach them later if you're interested. Dr. Tutzauer is over there, if I'm not mistaken. And Dr. Sandeep, Dr. Tutzauer is from communication. Sandeep is a real economist. And over here we have Christian Chu. He's from finance, and Melanie Green from communication also. So later on, if you would like to learn more about those particular disciplines, we do have faculty members from those departments as well. I would like now to just ask a more kind of pragmatic question, which is, if you were going to enroll in one of these programs, whether it's business administration, sociology, or psychology, what would you actually learn? Say you wanted to study the topic of Swiftconomics from one of these perspectives. Could you each in turn talk about the kind of the nuts and bolts of what you do in your classroom and what kind of learning activities you have? What are the kinds of pedagogical approaches that are specific to your own department or discipline? Maybe we'll start at the end with Marianne this time.
Well, my course is very experiential. I lecture for about an hour, and then I pair that content with an exercise or activity that brings that content to life. Again, moving through uncomfortable decisions and bringing in case studies, getting students up on their feet, talking as often as possible, breaking them out of their comfort zone. Just to be able to stand up in front of their peers of a group of 50 is daunting. I think we can all agree on that. The more practice they can get, the better. So in terms of the topics, we studied motivation, leadership, personality, what makes a person tick, how to best motivate and guide an employee through their work. We study culture, we study structure, how an organization is set up and structured by departments has many implications as to whether the enterprise will be successful or not. There's a whole range of things like that. And when a student goes through our school on the whole, they get a very well-rounded business education. So what is in the core? Accounting, finance, marketing, statistics. There's a whole quantitative side, and then that's paired with what we call the soft skills. So how can you work with people? How can you really exhibit your best thinking so that things in the workplace will go well? How can you make yourself promotable? So once a student is launched, how do they continue to really thrive in the workplace and find leadership roles and wonderful, exciting opportunities that will ensure that they have a really exciting career? So that's pretty much the overview of what goes on in my school. We also have a master's in business administration. That is an MBA program. Some of our students come out of this program and they go straight into our graduate program, which also has many, many opportunities of its own, but that's for another day. But yeah.
Thank you, Marianne. And just to point out that students, if they join the business administration program here, they can take a degree that's just general business administration, but they can also choose a concentration, which almost all of our students do, which would either be financial analysis, marketing, supply chain and operations management, or international business. So if you have some specialized interest and are thinking of a career in those, we do offer all those concentrations on top of just the general business administration degree. Always nice to have extra credentials in Singapore. Debbie, tell us about how you go about the study of sociology.
Well, I teach a range of courses. I teach medical sociology. I'll be teaching that here in the fall. This semester, I'm teaching social policies for aging societies. In case you don't know it in the audience, Singapore is getting old. And so the world that my students are going to age into is by definition an aging society. So I try to emphasize the importance of taking account the needs of every age group, not just older Singaporeans. I think too often when we think about aging populations, we just worry about older people, but we need to worry about children, young adults, working aged people. We need to worry about all of those within the context of an aging population. So my students, sometimes I worry that I work them to death in their course because it's a very intensive course and it's at the 400 level. But we do a lot of in-class activities individually or in groups. Students each write a policy brief. So in the policy brief, they have to work through an issue for a particular age group in Singapore in the context of the future aging population and present what they've learned in a 2 or 3 page document that anybody could understand. The importance of this is that they learn how to distill very abstract information into practical terms and then communicate it to a different audience. So I tell students, I want your policy briefs to be something you could put in your portfolio. And when you apply for a job, you can say to your prospective employer, look at this, look what I created. I understand how to do the research that informs this and also how to distill that down so that you understand it too. And then the culmination of the course is a poster session at the end where students work collaboratively in groups to create an informational poster about a policy or practice. Usually it revolves around Singapore. So even though we use US pedagogical methods, my content in this course is dominantly Singaporean. To communicate to their fellow students, I'd say, think about your audience. Is it the general public? Would we see this at a bus stop? Or are you preparing this for government ministers or policymakers? And I think both of those exercises give students hands-on experience in things that they're actually going to have to do in the real world. Most students, when they go out into their working lives, I know there's exceptions to this, but most students, when they go out into their working lives, they will not be taking tests. They just won't. The test taking, I hope, will mostly be behind them. But what they will need to do is to be able to communicate effectively and confidently with a range of different audiences. Sometimes it will be their coworkers, sometimes it will be their boss, sometimes it will be a different audience altogether. But along with the content of the course, which is about population aging, they're getting some human capital. Human capital, those are the things that we know how to do. They know how to do things when they get out of a sociology course that maybe they didn't know how to do when they went in. So we aim to be both a scientific discipline, but also to have real world relevance, because after all, that's the point. That's going to matter to our students in their next phase of life.
Thanks, Debbie. These are great points. And I have seen it myself for the 20 years that we've been running our program here in Singapore. It really genuinely is transformative for these exact reasons, that what the students are doing in their classes is very much, it's not just you do some assignment and it goes into a black hole. The whole concept of an audience, that once you graduate, you're not going to be handing in things to your professor anymore. Now you're going to be doing things that are germane to the operations of whatever organization you're in. far beyond just your own boss. So yeah, they get lots and lots and lots of good practice. And speaking of posters, I remind everyone that in the back of our hall today, there are some examples of some of the project work that our students have done. And please approach and talk to our students about that as well. Okay, so let's hear about psychology from Lee May.
Okay, so psychology, there are many different modules in psychology. I only can represent only introductory psychology. My colleagues actually teach a wide range of other modules, including cognitive psychology, clinical psychology, personality psychology. There's actually a wide range. I'm only at the gonna be basically be able to expose students pretty much the, you know, the beginnings of what's possible that students can learn about psychology in introductory psychology. So what do we really cover? Introductory psychology is pretty much the foundational concepts in psychology so that they're equipped to pretty much, take on the more advanced modules. But pretty much introductory psychology is also taken on by students who also do sociology as well as in communications and other disciplines as well. Students that also take on introductory psychology are taught, different skill sets. They are taught to also learn how to conduct research as well. So what we do in the class is that it's not all lecture. They're taught, some of the basic concepts, but they also have to do in-class activities. They're put in groups. They also have a major group projects they have to do in groups. So they actually have to design a particular study that they have to work in groups to do so. This part that makes up the majority of their whole whole grade actually. So they are allowed to choose, they're allowed to design, they either do, design a questionnaire, or they'll actually, go out there into the world to survey, to do naturalistic study, or they can study a child, actually. That's one of the things they're allowed to do. So they actually learn to actually conduct real life studies. So they actually are imbued with the necessary critical thinking skills, learn how to conduct literature review, collect the data, analyze it. They actually learn these kind of basic skills, which are necessary, to develop their critical thinking and knowledge assessments. But through actually learning introductory psychology, right, they also start to learn more about themselves. They learn more about knowing how people think, what motivates them, how to get along with other people. If they have to work in groups, they also learn how to be more empathetic, be more collaborative as well. So in part, it's all about challenging themselves, at the same time, it's about going out there to be able to learn how to cooperate with others, at the same time. It's all these necessary skills that you learn to see in graduates in the future as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great point about the group work that students do in our program is extensive, but sometimes students may grumble, oh, it's irritating, can't I just do an individual project? But guess what? In real life, once you graduate, you will have a lot of co-workers. Not all of them will be easy to work with. So if you get lots and lots and lots of practice at this stage, it's really a great tool for the rest of your life to be able to handle those kinds of adjustments. Okay, so we have covered most of the things. I want to leave some time so that our audience can raise some questions, but I have just a couple final short questions for our panelists today on a more human level. Lee May, have you ever been as fanatical about anything in your life as Swifties are about Taylor Swift?
This is really embarrassing to admit. Say it. Okay, once upon a time, very long ago, I will not say when, but I used to be a fan of tennis, and I used to follow ATP and WTA, and I used to follow Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, and all of them a lot. So I used to be a fan of, all these tennis players, and I used to be a bit of a tennis nerd. Very embarrassing.
Why is that embarrassing?
So
If you'll notice, I'm wearing my Buffalo Bills tie and I have a Buffalo Bills pin, so you can probably, I'm all in favor of sports fanaticism. Let's go on to Debbie. How about you? Have you ever been fanatical?
I probably have been fanatical. You know, I won't need to worry about how long ago it was because you can all see me, so you can figure it out yourselves. But I do know that the Beatles were the best musical group ever in human history. I don't think you need to be my age to know that. So I think I was fanatical about that. And as a Canadian, I also went through a period of hockey fanaticism, where I was really, really, really excited about hockey. I figure skated, you know, at that time, girls didn't have opportunities to play hockey. Or maybe it just meant that I was fanatical about boys who played hockey. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it was, but those are my two things, sports and music.
That's great.
And I already know the answer for Mary Ann, but you'll share it with us anyway, right?
Okay, I am a huge fangirl of a musician by the name of Bruce Springsteen. I have seen him 47 times in concert, and he shook my hand, which is the landing page on my website, and I have a photo of that. And I just saw him about a week before I left for Singapore this past spring. So just, there's a lot of what Taylor Swift brings, incredible work discipline, strong values, stick-to-itiveness, strength, all that stuff. So.
I'm glad you didn't say Bucky Dent.
Oh.
Okay, so let me just ask now, do anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists about our programs, about these various disciplines, about Swiftconomics, anything at all? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if you are not too shy to ask, you can just raise your hand and ask a question. But if you would prefer, you can put a question up using this Slido. See, so we already have some questions coming in.
Kevin, can you speak a little bit about internships? I saw a question there. I know we get a lot of questions about whether internships are integrated into our program. Can you speak about internship opportunities?
Thank you, Candace. Yes. Okay. So internships, there are no built-in internships in our program because not everybody wants an internship. So therefore we don't make it a requirement. However, we encourage students to take internships. It's a great thing to add in when you graduate. If you have had an internship, it gives you a competitive advantage. So even though it's not built in, there are still many, many, many opportunities, and we're seeing more and more of our students taking internships up. We have what's called Career Connect here at SIM. Career Connect is our career development office, and they have connections with industries all throughout Singapore in every kind of industry you can imagine. So no matter what you're interested in, you could approach Career Connect, and they would be able to help you make connections in order to find an internship for yourself. Oftentimes, it will mean taking a leave of absence. Our students can take up to 2 years of leaves of absence at any time that they want. It could mean that you're delaying your graduation, but it may be worth it. And it's also, I mentioned before about honors college, the internship can also be used to apply for experience credits for honors college, and you will get that additional credential as well. So though it's not built in, it is highly recommended.
And I could maybe bounce in on that too, because I direct a study abroad program exclusively for UB students, but from Singapore and from the home campus in London. And students do a 6 credit hour professional internship while they're in London. It's part of the program. So it's built into that study abroad in London program. Internships are required.
Yeah. Thank you. Kevin, there were a few questions about scheduling, particularly our structure of having the 3 different intakes. And then what can students expect in terms of number of days per week they would attend?
Okay, so it's pretty flexible. Typically, a student will take either somewhere 4 or 5 modules per semester, sometimes 3, depending on how fast they want to go. Basically, every student can decide for himself or herself, how rigorous do you want this to be? So the program is designed when students join, they are given a course sequence for their major. that will show semester 1, take this, semester 2, take this, semester 3, take this. And that's recommended, but you don't have to follow it rigidly. You can alter your course if you would like to. So any one given module, most of the modules are 3 credits. What that means is that you meet twice a week for a 3-hour block. That 3-hour block is divided into 2 halves. The first half is 90 minutes, which is called the lecture part. And then the second 90 minutes is consultation. So do you sit there for 90 minutes and listen to a lecture? Very seldom. I'd say that almost never would happen that you would go to a class and listen to a 90-minute lecture. Rather, you would go there, and that component of the class is exactly what our faculty members here were talking about, that you'll be doing sort of group discussions or projects or activities. There may be a lecture portion. That's pretty normal, but not 90 minutes worth. So, and then the consultation part of the class is not compulsory for students to stay behind, but the faculty stay back. And if students have any questions that they want to clarify about the content, they can also stay back and talk about research interests, career opportunities, best chicken wings in Buffalo, whatever they want to talk about with our faculty members. They can stay back and they have that 90-minute block of time in which they can consult with the faculty members. So in other words, if you are a student and you're taking a typical course load of say 4 courses per semester, you would have 4 classes meeting twice a week like that. And a normal schedule would be something like Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes it's a little irregular. It might be Monday and Thursday, or it could be Tuesday and Friday. And we have 3 class timings during the course of the day, classes at 8:30 in the morning, 12 noon, and 3:30. So everything is constrained within between 8:30 Monday morning. Last class ends at 6:30 on Friday. How you cobble together your schedule from semester to semester is really up to you.
Thank you, Kevin. There's a really good question that I would actually like to pose to each of the panelists if we have time. The question, we'll start with Marianne, asks if there is a particular type of student that thrives in business management, or if there are any qualities that you notice in graduates who succeed professionally. So any qualities that you see in graduates who are successful, Marianne, for business?
I would say that there's a fair degree of ambition. There's a fair amount of drive. Our students, if they have an interest in business, they want to get somewhere. What a big role for us is to help our students harness that ambition and make sure that it's directed meaningfully in a way that will help them accomplish something. It's kind of easy sometimes to have a lot of persistence and intensity on a goal, but if it's not meaningful, we could conceivably have a student, wasting time on something that's just not going to be very helpful for them as they advance into their career. So a lot of what we do is working with students to help them recognize that, to help them figure out the roadmap as to how they get from where they are to where they want to go and the tools that they need to do that. And I honestly think our school is very, very good on that particular aspect. We take a strong interest in our students. In a class like mine, they're capped at 45. That over the course of a semester, that gives me plenty of time to get to know the students individually, their stories, again, how to get them out of that comfort zone and how to really get them on that path where they see themselves as being ready and capable to take on the world.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Debbie, can we pose the same question to you?
Yeah, there aren't very many jobs advertised for sociologists, but sociologists do all kinds of different jobs. Understanding the science of human societies helps you fit into a lot of different roles. I think the students who are most successful, and so I'm using maybe a slightly different metric from successful than some people would, but the people who are most satisfied with their lives and feel like they've made a right choice about how to proceed into adulthood are the students who I see who are really curious, really willing to think for themselves, passionate about things and with sort of a global, not necessarily individually, but a global concern about the well-being of their fellow humans and the planet. Those are the students, those are things they already have that we try to magnify in our courses, and that if they take it out into the real world, helps them succeed on their own terms.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And Lee May, psychology students, what are some qualities that you've seen for successful graduates?
So in terms of successful graduates in the psychology program, so a lot of the seniors that already graduated from the psychology program, they go on to do a lot of different types of jobs, not necessarily always doing psych related jobs. They go on to do, HR, they go on to finance jobs, they go on to, working in special education, all kinds of different jobs. But some of the more common qualities that they have demonstrated is that they, they were very engaged in class, they were very participatory, they were very, as Debbie said, very curious. They were always wanting to learn. They demonstrate a lot of initiative, self-direction in class. They were always, wanting to ask a lot of questions. Sometimes, some of the more curious mind, they might stay back in class, ask questions. Sometimes they would talk more to question like, is there anything more I could learn about things? Or they might ask, what other things I could explore more, just generally talk more about career choices in the future, or just curiously, just want to talk more about topics at hand, just showing a more curious aspect about, topics at hand. And also some of the more successful ones, have a particular drive, as Marianne said, they have a drive, there's a certain drive about wanting to succeed on projects as well. So most of them definitely demonstrate that certain aspect of them.
Can I just add to that one other comment? Just remember also that University at Buffalo is a research university. And so our faculty are the people who are actually exploring areas of human knowledge that have not yet been explored. They're looking for the answers to unanswered questions. And so I think that for anyone who has curiosity and really wants to learn exciting new things and to be part of that, University at Buffalo is a great place to come here in the Singapore landscape. Looks like we have come to the end of our time. Okay, so thank you, Candace, for those questions. We saw that there were many other questions that we didn't have time to answer. However, don't worry. We have our program executives over here who can help to answer questions. We have representatives on this side of the room for each of the academic disciplines, each of the majors. You can find people over there to talk to as well. And Candace and I and our faculty members will also be here. Oh, yes, you have a campus tour schedule here. You can go and have a look around our lovely campus. Any other things to call attention to? That's it. Okay, so thank you again for coming to our panel on Swiftconomics, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of your day here at SIM. Thank you.